Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So they're back with the patch notes review for patch 4.1, and as usual with the major patches, this is a huge patch, so we'll of course try to cover everything in as timely a manner as possible. Now, in case you guys have been wondering why we haven't been doing tier lists for the past like 2 or 3 patches, it's basically because by the time I want to make a tier list, it's like a few days, like 3 days or 4 days away from the next patch, and like at that point, there really is no point to create a tier list, is there? So I will, of course, be creating a tier list for patch 4.1, hopefully in the next couple of days. But let's just get straight into the patch notes. So first up, we have Urgot releasing the moment the patch comes out. So he is a top laner who is kind of ranged, so I'm gonna be pretty interested to see his itemization, because items like, you know, like Steric's Gauge doesn't work on him, Depth's Dance gives lower effects, so I'm not really sure what his itemization is gonna be, so that's gonna be pretty interesting. Next up, the Wild Pass is also coming up with Superhero Vi as the skin. We have now uncapped levels, so basically if you have all those like XP boosts, etc., it's now going to be actually useful again. But the interesting part about this is you don't actually get any rewards, but they do say that you will get rewards in the future, so I guess you can start leveling up now. Either way, it's not too important. We of course have Urgot's trivia coming out when the patch releases as well, together with Urgot. And this is going to be the same as Cassidy's trivia, where I think you have to answer like 5 or so like trivia questions, which normally you can just Google and like find it from the wiki page. Then now we move into the champion changes. So first up, we have 2 of these. The first one is on Alistar, where now if you have your pulverize out off cooldown, you can double tap your headbutt to instantly do the headbutt pulverize combo. This is sort of like how Jarvan's EQ combo works, so you can double tap your E. So this basically just makes the champion easier to play and easier to execute, which on Jarvan I think is a huge difference. But I think on Alistar, and the next one is actually Jace. Jace, when you double tap your Q, you will instantly cast your QE combo, which is the one where you blast your shock blast through the acceleration gate. I think for these two, it just basically it's nice quality of life and nice just it's just really nice, like easier to control, I guess you could say, because let's face the facts, if you're a half decent Alistar or half decent Jace, you're gonna know how to hit but pulverize, or you're gonna know how to QE in the correct order anyways. Like, you basically, the amount of people this actually helps is helps to pull off the combo is going to be really just a small handful, and it's just going to make it easier for everyone else to do it, to do something they could already do. So it's just really nice quality of life change overall, in my opinion. Garen is getting a 5% movement speed increase on his Q, as well as a 10% damage reduction increase in the first second of his W. Not quite sure why Garen's getting buffed, because I think Garen is actually really strong, but I guess he must be underperforming at some level, so they are giving him a round of buffs, gonna make him even better. Jace, we've covered the change, and his form change is now going down from 6 to 5 seconds, so easier to change forms. Jinx is getting the normal ADC treatment of having her W scale with attack speed, and on Jinx that's really useful because you build quite a bit of attack speed in addition to having lethal tempo, in addition to your passive giving you attack speed. So the max decrease in like the wind up time is going to be when you're 140% attack speed. Not quite sure if you reach that amount, because you have like Stormrazor, like Runans, and like lethal tempo in your passive. You might actually reach somewhere close to there, or maybe you even will reach there with your passive, but that's just a nice change overall. The Chompers getting a cooldown decrease in the earlier levels, which is actually huge because Jinx maxes this last, so you're only gonna really put points into this at your last few levels. So having a lower cooldown at the first rank, and also like a marginal increase in root duration on the first rank, is going to be a very nice buff for Jinx. And Jinx is a lot weaker compared to a lot of other ADCs at this point in time, so she definitely does need a couple of buffs. Now, I think this is the most big, technically it's not a buff, it's technically an adjustment, because your Darken healing ratio is going down. That's a nerf, but I think that overall this is the best, hugest buff for Kayn that Kayn has ever got. I'm gonna explain why real soon. First up, let's just go through the boring changes. We have a out base damage increase by 50 at all ranks. That's gonna help him very obviously. We have the Darken healing ratio getting cut again by 3% at all levels. Does make sense. His Darken form, the red form, is really strong. A lot of healing. And his Shadow Assassin extra magic damage ratio is going up again. This time it's going up by 6% at all ranks. So this has been buffed twice now. Up to 52% at max level, which is pretty insane. And this is the change that changes everything. Adjustment to Shadow Assassin's passive. Reset cooldown upon entering fights. Reset cooldown upon taking damage from champions. So, in case you guys didn't know, this is actually a bug fix. So Blue Kane's passive has a bug where if you are in combat, the passive doesn't refresh, and that passive gives you that bonus magic damage when on the first attack. Basically, think of it like a Youmuu's, like the old Youmuu's. Actually, that's not a good example because no one knows, not many people knows what old Youmuu's does. Okay, think about it like a Storm Razor. So you have to charge up your Storm Razor by walking around. Then when you attack, you will consume that Storm Razor charge. So Kane's passive basically is, when you first enter combat, you should have one attack that does bonus damage, like to proc your Storm Razor, so-called. When you ult, you auto refresh that, and then you can proc it again. That's why Kane has insane burst. You QW, ult, and then when you come out of your ult, you proc electrocute, you proc the extra damage, and you attack again, and that guy's probably dead, just one shot instantly. However, Kane's passive was bugged. Blue Kane's passive was bugged, where your cooldown would reset. When they say cooldown reset, what they mean is that the timer it takes to fill up the passive again. So for example, Storm Razor, you need to go from 0 to 100. So if you attack a jungle monster, it goes back to 0. If you attack another jungle monster, it goes back to 0 again. It never reaches back to 100. So you can never get that bonus magic damage unless you stand around and do nothing for 8 seconds. So what is supposed to be, which is what they changed it to now, is you only have the cooldown reset when you take damage from champions. So for example, if I gank, I proc my passive, and the enemy attacks me, my cooldown's going to reset to 0 because I'm in combat, so I'm not going to get that bonus damage again until I leave combat or until I ult. But it used to be that jungle, minions, and even objectives, anything, would cause you to not be able to proc your passive, which is why Blue Kane was so weak for so long. So I think that with this buff slash bug fix slash change, I think Blue Kane is now not only going to be viable, I think he's probably going to be good. We'll have to see about that. But next change, Lucian getting the same treatment as the other ADCs. His Q is going to be casted faster. Lucian doesn't build a lot of attack speed. I guess you can go for Storm Razor in some builds and Charge Blade, so you do have decent amount of attack speed. This is marginally helpful. Okay, so here is our second most interesting change. I regard the Kane to be better than this change, but Pyke is being made into like a laner again. So they nerfed his Q and his E to deal only 25% damage to minions and monsters, but now his Q does normal damage to minions and extra damage to monsters, and also his E now does 80% damage to minions and 110% damage to monsters. So what this basically tells us is they now want Pyke to be a jungler, to be a mid laner, and to be a top laner as well. So basically, this means you can basically play Pyke in every single role except ADC, which is pretty interesting as to why they did that on purpose, because it seems that they didn't want that to happen, which is why they nerfed it in the first place. And his ult has a very interesting new ability, and this is a little bit ambiguous in terms of phrasing in my opinion. So the first part says Pyke earns 110% additional gold every time he executes an enemy. So the way I interpret this is he is assuming I execute the enemy, I'm supposed to get 100 gold. So I get that 100 gold, and then I get another 110 gold from this new passive. So that gives me 210 gold from killing that one enemy instead of the normal 100 gold I would have gotten. However, if someone assists him, that last assisting teammate will get 100% of the additional gold, and Pike will get 110% of the additional gold, which basically means when you execute someone, Pike still gets 100 plus 110, and your teammate will get another extra 100. And if you try to ult someone and they died to your teammate, Pike still gets the 110, which seems pretty broken, so I might be interpreting this wrong. But either way, whatever this whole chunk means, Pike is just way better now because he can now play in all roles. Because of his Q and E doing significant damage to minions and monsters now. So either way, it's just a huge buff for Pike. Renekton, slight cooldown decrease on his Slice and Dice. Probably not gonna change too much. Seraphine. When you use your double shield, the shield amount is no longer going to like reset to base amount. It's actually gonna stack, and I find it quite strange because PC has always had this where your shield will double stack, whereas in Wild Rift it was never the case. I don't know why. Seraphine has never actually been broken or strong, and this wasn't like a nerf to her at some point, so I'm not sure why. But to me, this is how it was always supposed to be. Now Sion getting a bunch of interesting adjustments, so his Q base damage is not base damage, his maximum charge base damage is going up, which is rare you can ever maximum charge his Q in the first place because it's so easy to dodge if you charge it up all the way. Stun duration is going down, so you're trading CC for damage. I think the CC is probably more important because like it's really hard to get to maximum charge anyways. If they scale like his minimum charge as well, then this would be a good change. But I don't think it's really good. I think it kind of hurts him. It's meant to make his laning phase stronger, but how often do you maximum charge your Q? His shield is going up at the earlier ranks, again helping his laning phase, and his ult is going down, stun duration going down by 0.25 seconds at all ranks, and 0.25 when it comes to CC is actually significant, although it seems like nothing. But yeah, so it's gonna make his CC a bit weaker and his teamfight a little bit weaker, but his laning a little bit stronger. I think overall that's a negative change in my opinion because you can almost never maximum charge your Q anyways. Soraka, she's getting base healing buff on her Q to herself and AP ratio buff as well, so her Q just getting buffed overall. But in the meantime, her E is getting nerfed, so it's getting nerfed by like 20 base at all rank. So she heals herself more, but she heals people less. I think overall this is still an okay change. Like it's not really a buff or nerf, it's kind of just adjustment. Because 20 is not all that bad. Like 20 less healing is not all that bad, and you're healing yourself by a lot more, both in terms of AP ratio and base amount. So I think overall you could say it's more positive than negative. Tryndamere, base attack speed growth is going down by 1, and in compensation you're getting this is from your passive. When they added this, a lot of people thought Tryndamere would be broken, including me. Turns out that was not the case. But the base attack speed you're getting from your passive is going to 55, 60, 65, 70. Of course, this is with every alt rank increase. You get 55 additional attack speed at rank 1, so you can kind of run down people at rank 1, and you could always do that, but even with the 45% attack speed. But Tryndamere is just very, very unpopular. I haven't seen the Tryndamere in like an eternity. So I guess he must be weak and he needs a buff. So his Mocking Shout, which is his W duration, is going up to 3 seconds from 2.5. The attack speed reduction on the enemies is now going to a flat 35 instead of scaling, which this is the 3rd rank one, so this is pretty good. But the movement speed, they're getting less of their movement speed taken away. So it used to be 20, 30, 40, 50. Now it's like 15, 20, 25, 30, which is a lot less. So it's just an adjustment overall. So next up we have Varus. So Varus getting another buff. I'm not sure why they keep on buffing Varus, but I guess they think he's weak or they want him to be in a better state. So max health damage per stack of blight is going up by 1% at all ranks, which is pretty significant. And his base damage on his ult is going up at higher ranks, and ability power ratio is going up by 20%. So AP Varus is still pretty popular amongst people. I don't really build it myself, but that will help out AP Varus. It also help out AD Varus, both of these changes. The lethality one and the on-hit one. It's gonna just help Varus overall. I think that the most significant is the max health damage per stack of blight, especially because now tanks are gonna get a lot stronger with the new items, which we'll cover in just a little bit. Warwick. They're trying to make Warwick into a viable Baron laner as well. So what they're doing is, for his Q, he deals extra 50% damage to minions and restores 50% of his cooldown when he kills minions. So you're meant to use this to last hit minions. Mana cost is also going down, so it's going to be a lot more spammable. And the max damage to monsters is surprisingly going down by a little bit. So they're kind of weakening his jungle clear and at the same time making his Baron lane stronger. Pretty interesting. His W movement speed is going down by 5% in all ranks, and attack speed is going down by 10% in all ranks. 10% attack speed reduction kind of hurts, honestly, because Warwick, of course, relies on his W for attack speed. If you're going for an attack speed style build, which is what's most popular now, with like the Kraken Slayer and the Triforce, you kind of max W first to get more attack speed, but that's going to be a bit weaker now, so maybe they want him to build more tanky. And with the new tank items, I think that could be a viable way to go. So his E is getting a huge buff. They say rework, but it's a huge buff. The second cast will no longer prematurely end the damage reduction effect. So even when you fear enemies, you're still gonna get damage reduction. All in all, it matters, but it matters a little less because if they're getting CC'd by you anyways, they can't be attacking you, so the damage reduction is not gonna matter too much. Of course, it does matter when there are other ranged champions nearby, but it's overall a nice buff. So we're now gonna take a look at all these ARAM or Earth and in One for All changes. We're gonna jump straight into the items. So first new item, we have the Mantle of the 12th Hour, which costs 2,900 gold, built from Chain Vest and a Negatron Cloak, gives 50 of each type of resistance, and a lifeline passive that if you drop below 35% health, you will heal 200 plus 50% of your health over 3 seconds. And if you're a tank, this is a significant amount because 50% of your health. I don't know if this is only 50% of your bonus health or 50% of your health, because when we see like the gameplay examples, the amount that it heals is quite little. It can't be 50% of your health. That's like half of your health. That doesn't make sense. Also, you gain 55% of slow resistance. I'm not sure what slow resistance is, and 30 movement speed for 3 seconds. Basically, this is meant for you to run away. Like if you hit below a certain amount of health, this slow resistance and movement speed is for you to run away. Now the interesting part about this item is it scales with health. It doesn't give any health, and this is not gonna be too great as like a first item, but it's a really great item because it gives both stats. The only item that does this, I think, is the Zeke's Convergence, which is kind of a support item. So this is actually going to be really good for tanks to get both stats. However, you still need to build your normal tank items because this gives no health. That's kind of the issue. Tanks need health. But overall, I think it's a really good item for tanks. Then we have Amaranth Twin Guard, which costs 3,200, also built from Chain Vest and Negatron Cloak. Gives 55 of each stat, which is more than the Mantle, of course. And the passive is when you're in combat, you gain endurance per second, and when you're at 5 stacks, so it's like after 5 seconds basically, you gain size, 20% tenacity, and increase your defensive stats by 30% until you leave combat. So it's sort of a Riftmaker thing where you have to charge it up for like 5 seconds, but Riftmaker is 3 seconds. And this is meant to be like a 3rd, 4th, 5th item kind of thing because you get extra 30% of your armor and MR. And this basically means if you build it early, it's not going to be so good. But then again, a lot of people built Death Cap first item and Death Cap second item instead of building it 3rd or 4th. So I think it's possible you might see this early on, especially because health is a lot more valuable later in the game, just that most people like to build it earlier, which of course health is really good. Health is really good at the start of the game, but it scales really, health and resistances scale really well into the later stages of the game when they're combined with each other. So you could viably go for resistances first and health later, but I think that for tanks, this is probably going to be better later than earlier. So yeah, but this is going to be a huge, amazing item for tanks that's going to make them a lot more tanky. Like getting extra 30% armor and MR sounds like it's going to be insane. So we have a new Shimmering Spark, which is basically what built into Balmy Cinder. So this costs 500. So I think the idea is you can buy this as your starting item. So you can use this to clear the jungle, and you can use this to clear minions in the lane. I think that's the idea. So you can start off with this Shimmering Spark item. And it just gives you 50 health basically. It's basically just a better Ruby Crystal question mark. So it of course builds into Bami Cinder, which is now getting a price increase, and the damage per second is going up, is doubling basically. So it's gonna give you better wave clear and better jungle clear for a little bit of a higher price, which is worth. So we have of course the Sunfire Aegis, still cost the same total, but of course Bami Cinder is now more expensive, and each stack you get is gonna deal 7% instead of 8% damage. That's a nerf. When you stack up to 6 times, which is the max stacks, your basic attacks causes 50% of the damage instead of the full damage, which is also a nerf. However, your damage to jungle monsters is going up, and your damage to minions is going up tremendously. So this is again meant to be for wave clear and jungle clear mainly. It's not meant to be for damage against the enemy champions, although it still can be used for that. But the one that's meant to be for damage is the Searing Crown, which costs 300 gold less, built out of I think the same, no, that's not the same items, because this one gives health, this one gives health and armor. So built out of Bami Cinder and Chain Vest. This one gives you 300 health and 50 armor. Pretty good stats. Like this should be a pretty good like first item, because it gives you both health and armor. You also get this new passive Fury Touch. When you basic attack, or basically when you attack anybody, it burns them for 3 seconds and causes magic damage equivalent to 1.6% of target's match HP. And it's half if you're a ranged champion, makes sense, and deals 150% damage to minions and monsters. So despite this being meant to be for clearing, this one still does decent damage to minions and monsters. Of course, this one stacks up like 6 times, so it's gonna overall do way more damage, but this one still does damage, so deals up to 125 damage to jungle monsters now. But anyways, even so, 1.6% of a minion or monster's HP is very, very little. This is meant to be especially effective against other tanks, and it's also effective against other champions, but it's kind of not really useful against minions and monsters, to be very honest. So it's kind of just not meant for that. So next up, they're changing Bramble Vest, and there's clearly some kind of typo here, because Bramble Vest obviously does not cost 3k gold, and obviously it's not going to be 27k gold now. This should be for Thornmail later on. I'm not even sure if it, I don't believe it gives 200 health, so I think this is also for Thornmail later on. But what we can see here is that the Thorn damage is going up. The base one's going up, but the bonus armor part is going down. So they basically say they're trying to encourage people to build the entire Thornmail. So what they're doing to it is they're giving it lower cost, lower health I presume, but now your passive Thorn damage is gonna scale with both your health and your armor. I'm not sure how this encourages people to build it earlier, because after all, it scales with bonus health and armor, and you need other items for you to have bonus health and armor, and it's always been about the grievous wounds, not the passive reflection damage from the thorns anyway. So first up, we don't even know what the changes really are, because there's some kind of typo here. But secondly, if the changes are what I think they are, I don't think that they're going to be very effective in achieving the goal that Riot wants. So now we go on to the item reworks. We have Force of Nature, which now, when you take skill damage, you get a 7-second firmness layer, stacks up to 6 times, and when you deal damage to enemy champions, you refresh the duration of the layer, but you have to take damage to stack up your layers, by the way. At 6 stacks, you gain 10% movement speed and reduce all magic damage taken by 25%. Now this is a really interesting change. Currently, you can stack up to 5 times, and each time you get attacked, you get 6 MR and 6 move speed. So now the thing here is that now they're giving percentage. So you're getting 25% reduced damage, reduced magic damage compared to 30 extra magic resist. I think overall this version should be better, but I think in some scenarios the past version of just 30% flat MR might have been better, but I think this is meant to be a buff overall. Although it seems pretty hard to stack, but then again the old one was also the same. That's the nature of how the item works. But you only get value when you reach max stacks. At like 5 stacks, for example, you're gonna get no extra stats. That's just something to take note of. but I think that this is overall a buff. So Abyssal Mass no longer has the damage amplification on AP. Instead, now when you take magic damage, you gain 20% of the damage taken as a charge for 5 seconds. When you root an enemy champion, this is very specific. When you root an enemy champion, like I'm pretty sure that this is meant to be a little bit more general, because it means that if you like stun an enemy champion, this does not work, or airborne an enemy champion, this does not work. I'm pretty sure that this is meant to be when you CC, but okay, let's just read it as it is. When you root an enemy champion, you consume your remaining charges to cause a 400-yard explosion. Why is 400 yards? Like, as in, I know that that's like the unit of measurement, but what is a yard? What is 1 yard in terms in Summoner's Rift? Like, don't they use units like 20 units away or whatever? Like, what is this measurement supposed to be? You cause a 400-yard explosion near the first rooted target, deals magic damage equal to the remaining charge. Yeah, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea what this item is all about. Why is it only on root, and why is it a 400-yard explosion? But basically, the premise of the item is you store magic damage, and when you CC someone, they go boom, they take damage, and people around them all go boom, they all take damage as well. So yeah, I think that's the premise. Now, this could be OP if there is someone who can like root multiple people at one go in close proximity and cause them to take damage from each other. So for example, let's say there's me and my support standing right behind / in front of one another. Lux shoots a binding, hits both of us go boom, take damage from ourselves, then both of us go boom, take damage from each other, like something like that. I think this item could be really, really strong in certain circumstances, but you have to take like damage for that to happen. Obviously, you don't want to build this on Lux, by the way. I'm just giving an example of what I'm trying to say. Like, that's the quickest one I could think of. But which tank can like root multiple people like together at one spot? Like, Amumu is a stun, so you can't really do that if this description is actually correct. So this is a very specific item, I think. So anyways, let's just move on. So we're getting a Relic Shield kind of rework, where instead of having to go 50%, 30% for minions, it's now just 75% flat, which is a lot easier to execute. And you also get an indicator of when that is the case, which is really useful for people to know when they can do it, as in when they can attack the minion. Now, instead of getting 20% gold for yourself and 100% gold for the nearby allied champion, now instead when you kill minions, they get the normal gold, but you get 50% of the normal gold plus 75. Now this, if you calculate this overall is a net win, because 75 gold in the first place is kind of between the cost of a melee and a caster minion in the first place. And even if you use it on cannon, you're still gonna get more overall, because you're gonna get 50% of the kill gold. Overall, this gives you just more gold, which is why the charge cooldown is going from 20 to 30 seconds. So you're gonna get less charges, but each charge is gonna give you more gold. Spectral Sickle basically is getting the same change. Your charge cooldown is going up by 5 seconds, but each charge is going to give you a lot more gold. And this is a net win, especially for the sickle, because sometimes you have to be in dangerous positions to poke with the sickle, and therefore having to poke less with the sickle is definitely a good thing. So inhibitors no longer respawn after 90 minutes. Then what's the point of inhibitors anyway? I think that inhibitors really only make a difference like past 20 minutes or so, when like, you know, multiple inhibitors have been destroyed, inhibitors are respawning all over the place, etc. Anyways, jungle monsters are also now gonna spawn at the exact same time, because some of them have like a 1-2 second like delay, etc., which affects the clear, so that's good. Skins, Urgot's coming out on release, and the Dawnbringer Nightbringer series is coming out on a week later. And these are some accessories, and that is pretty much it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this patch review. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.